Great. So we're returning at 4:30 p.m. as promised. We're going to move on to item six. No, item five. Sustainable Mobility Plan, Active Transportation Monitoring Program, Data Collection Plan, and we'll have Nathan do the presentation.
Thank you, Chair Gokin and members of the Traffic and Mobility Commission. I'm Nathan Schmidt, Transportation Planning and Mobility Manager. And this item is in regards to the Active Transportation Monitoring Program. So the recommended action for this item is to first receive a staff presentation and then provide feedback on the draft data collection plan. So the Active Transportation Monitoring Program was a program that was originally identified in the Sustainable Mobility Plan, which was adopted earlier this year. As part of this program, it's an annual monitoring program, so intended to be conducted each year, that would allow the city, public residents to track changes in citywide travel behavior patterns for all modes. So it's looking at ways to track year-over-year changes for all modes in relation to the construction of active travel infrastructure. So when we say active travel, that includes bikes, pedestrian, and people who use transit. So think of all of those modes together, and we'll be able to track those on an annual basis. It would also allow the city to track progress towards some of our other goals as part of other plans and policies, and those would be related to things such as vehicle miles traveled or VMT reductions, just general levels of active travel use throughout the city, and reduction in greenhouse gas emissions as part of our climate action plan efforts. So just to highlight a few of the key performance measures which we are looking to analyze as part of the Active Transportation Monitoring Program. The first and foremost which comes to mind is just general activity. So the amount of active travel use throughout the city, that's in terms of bike, pedestrian, transit, ridership counts. And then also looking at the travel mode split. So what is the split between people taking passenger vehicles versus people walking, people biking, taking transit, getting at some of those key requirements that the city needs to meet. Sources for this data, first and foremost, we're looking at conducting multimodal traffic counts, which we'll get into detail in a moment here. Also, we would be obtaining transit ridership data directly from the North County Transit District. They have automated people counters on all of their vehicles, so we're able to get that level of detail, by the route, by stop, to see how many people are taking transit at these count locations that we are conducting. Another source, more regional source, is the SANDAG travel survey data. So that's looking at kind of regional destinations and where people are traveling, how far they're traveling, and by what modes. SANDAG typically conducts these every 4 or 5 years or so. So that wouldn't necessarily be able to be updated annually, but we would have data that we could use on a regional level that could be incorporated into these performance measures. Another performance measure on an annual basis, looking at safety. So measuring that by collisions by travel mode. A separate program that the city is working on is the Local Roadway Safety Plan, the LRSP. We would be utilizing that to obtain, citywide collision database and looking at collision on a year-over-year basis. Next, looking at cost to benefit. So this would be a comparison of where the city is building infrastructure, could be locally, could be citywide, and seeing kind of where the benefit is by mode, by travel mode. So the source for that will, of course, be the city's capital improvement plan, where we can get the cost and project data. And we would be comparing that with our active travel counts to see, do these projects result in additional people walking or people taking bike. Another key performance measure is environmental benefit. So that goes hand in hand with looking at changes in annual VMT. So are people traveling a little less further because they're able to get some of these destinations by bike or walking? Also looking at changes in greenhouse gas emissions and reductions there. So again, source for that would be going back to the traffic counts, looking at travel mode split data and SANDAG travel survey data as well. So those are the key performance measures. Now I'm going to go into focus the majority of my presentation on the multimodal traffic counts to get your feedback on the process for these. So the counts themselves, they are essentially a count of all travel modes. So that would include pedestrians, people walking, bicyclists, people on bike, vehicles, and heavy vehicles as well. As I mentioned earlier, we would also be able to obtain direct transit data from NCTD that we could use in our counts to determine the number of people actively using transit at these count locations. The duration, we are proposing to go with a 12-hour duration. So this would be from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. These would be within the daylight hours. The majority of these counts for bike pedestrians would be conducted by cameras. So having that daylight visibility is important for that. So that's why we're proposing just the 12-hour counts. And it also gives us a little more resources where we can actually divide them up into 2-day counts. So we would be conducting the counts on a typical weekday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. And that would be more of the commuter trips. And then also looking at a Saturday count as well. So all of these locations would include both a weekday and a Saturday count. In terms of the seasonality, the counts would be they would be occurring annually in September. Typically, the traffic engineering judgment is to either conduct your bike and ped counts in May or September. This year, September just made sense because we're just getting out of the travel restrictions with COVID. Things are starting to normalize. So I think September makes the most sense in this case. And this is just a rough schematic diagram, just trying to help everyone kind of understand what these counts would be looking at. This is an example of a segment count here. So again, the counts would be conducted with a combination of cameras, so cameras posted on the street, and then also the tubes. So the tubes would be used to collect the vehicle travel volumes. So the black line there shows, we would be able to collect vehicle traffic volumes in each direction. We're also able to get vehicle classification. So that means we can see if there's heavy vehicles, get a count of those and separate that out from pedestrian vehicles. And then for the bike and ped, we would need to do video cameras. So we would position cameras somewhere where you could have a clear view of the entire section here. And we could actually, because it's video, we can divide the counts up. So for bike screen lines, we could count the number of bikes in each direction in the bike lanes versus the bikes that are taking the lane, that are taking the travel lane. For pedestrians, we could also divide that up as well into screen lines where we could count, of course, here, the blue lines here show where we count pedestrians on the sidewalks. And then also pedestrians, because we know that happens, is pedestrians that would be maybe jogging in the bike lanes here. We could count that as well. But essentially this shows how all of the various users would be accounted for with each of these counts. We're also proposing a few locations for multimodal traffic counts at intersections. So intersections are essentially just a collection of screen lines put together. So this location here just shows an example of Carlsbad Boulevard at Avenida Encinas. And the reason this is a location where we would want to do an intersection count is because, as we talked about last month, the city is considering implementing a coastal rail trail project here on Avenida Encinas. So this would allow us to conduct our pre-project counts as well as our post-project counts. And with the screen line just on Carlsbad Boulevard, you wouldn't necessarily be able to determine the amount of bikes and pedestrians going on to Avenida Encinas. So we've got a few of these locations, but essentially they're just a collection of screen line counts at each leg of the intersection. So we can determine the ins and the outs and decipher the volumes that way to see how many people are taking Carlsbad Boulevard to Avenida Encinas, how many are just continuing along Carlsbad Boulevard. It just offers us greater flexibility and a little more robust data set at some of these kind of key connection points throughout the city. I think we have 3 locations identified for intersection counts. Keep in mind, these are of course more expensive. So they're approximately double, the cost of just one screen line count. So we need to keep that in mind when planning these out. So those are the daily counts we discussed, the manual counts. The city is also looking to install what we call permanent automated counters. These would be 2 locations that we're looking at on Carlsbad Boulevard. One would likely be near the north border with the city of Oceanside, and to the south at the city of Encinitas location. We don't have the exact locations of these determined yet because we still need to work with our signal group to identify how we can connect these counters, because they do require a separate power supply to keep them going. So this would be connected in with the existing signal equipment. But just overall, we are looking at one on the north and the south sides of Carlsbad Boulevard. On Carlsbad Boulevard, we think it makes the most sense because that is, of course, where we see the most activity. Doing these automated counts, so these would be running throughout the year, and we would be able to get data down into the 15-minute increment level. They would provide us continuous counts throughout the year, so we could look at things like, okay, what are our seasonal variations? You know, our bike and ped volumes generally going up? Are we see trending in a certain direction? And also, we would also be able to apply factors on more like 2 or 4 hour counts to apply daily factors to where we could get daily volumes for some of these locations near Carlsbad Boulevard. So we would supplement the manual counts, which would give us, you know, greater coverage, with these automated counts, which would we have data throughout the year. So those are the various types of multimodal traffic counts that are being proposed. Also attached to the staff report is a memorandum that was submitted by our consultant, Chen Ryan, and this goes into greater detail on generally how all of the count locations were determined with this count siting criteria here. You know, generally our first take was, you know, just based upon looking at locations which are the most used in terms of bicycle and pedestrian trips. We looked at things such as, you know, proximity to schools, visitor serving destinations, proximity to the coastline, and regional bikeway connections as well. So that was kind of our starting point. From there, we slightly refined some of the locations using this count siting criteria here, looking at various criteria such as presence of transit, presence of historic vehicle counts, which we could look back on and extrapolate those out to future years, looking at things such as level of traffic stress, presence of existing or proposed bike facilities or trail facilities, and then also looking at things such as socioeconomic strata, so making sure that we do have a representative coverage of areas with Carlsbad residents with various socioeconomic groups, and then also looking at just the mobility element classification. With this one, we did try to focus on providing some of our count locations within like school streets, just to provide a kind of a very cross section amongst our different mobility element classifications for our corridors. So that's the siting criteria. From that, we developed the map, which we've attached to the staff reports, and I will pull up the GIS map later, which we can talk through if we do have questions about specific locations. But the resulting network is now, we're at 25 segment count locations and 3 intersection locations. So with this, we're pretty much maximizing our available budget. You know, so I think we would like to, you know, if we do have comments and suggestions for changes, we would like to generally keep this amount of locations, but we can certainly look at relocating some locations, changing them out for other locations. You know, some locations don't necessarily make sense, but you see a good location for another, we can exchange them and move them around. This is the list of locations here, and then I will. So for the recommended action, again, is just to receive the presentation and provide and use this as a chance to obtain the Traffic Commission's feedback on the data collection plan. So with that, I will take any questions from the commission, and I'll pull up the map too if we do want to get into details about specific locations where we can zoom in and see them a little better here.
Thank you, Nathan. So do we have commissioner comments? Okay. I'm going to start with Vice Chair Perez.
Yeah, thanks, Nathan. A great presentation. Just one question that I have in regards to that online map of those count locations.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you want me to put my screen up or if you want to.
Yeah, go ahead and share if you
okay.
have it to go.
All right, let me make sure I'm ready. I'm not sure another step and sure. Okay. And let me know once you can see the screen. It should be the map of the thing, right? Okay. So this, I just have my question or a concern is the mapping of some of this, and what I mean by this, or what I'm trying to get at is, I just want to kind of focus this point right here. So here's the 5. Here's the Aqua Lagoon, small lagoon.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Try to speak direct to the computer. Otherwise, we get echo when we don't get everything.
Is that better?
Yes. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. So if you see this, this is saying that this is a trail network. I don't believe this is a trail that goes on the east side of the 5 over, or any of these items right here. This is where the power plant station is.
Yeah.
So I'm just a little bit concerned about that. And, there are some other things that we can talk offline, but, for me, that's just kind of a question. It's like, is that really a valid trail? Which I don't think it is, but then again, I'm just.
Right. Yeah. I think what it's not showing is it's a proposed trail. So we can clean that up. We can show all of the proposed trails in like dash lines. But if you do click on it, it does show, I believe, the status, if it's an existing or proposed feature. Yeah, if you just go to that line. So yeah, if you go to the status there, but I think that's a good comment, Commissioner Perez. We can revise the map to make it clear on what, because that's clearly not there now.
Okay. Yeah, and that was just the point I wanted to make. So thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Next, Commissioner Linke, you had a question?
That was more of a suggestion, I think, than the questions. Again, I have a couple of slides just to show some locations.
Yeah, I can
bring that up.
Yes.
But it's a really good plan. I think it's great. My main suggestion is on the count locations, and I know there's a limited budget, and maybe there's ways around that. But one of my concerns is that Sandag has created what they're calling a regional bike network, and El Camino Real in Carlsbad, El Camino Real and Palomar Airport Road are the 2 roads that are part of that so-called regional bike network. And we have a lot of developments that have developed along those roads recently that are citing pedestrian and bicycle as alternatives to mitigate their traffic. And Palomar Airport Road is, of course, a big employment corridor. But I feel that there's like a lack of counting sites. It's very sparse along Palomar Airport Road and El Camino Real. I think those are 2 of the really main, commute-based areas where we would want to take counts. I don't know, Mr. Schmidt, do you have the slides?
Oh, sorry. Thought I was sharing. Should be up now.
I was filling in there. So
okay.
This is the Sandag planned regional bike network. So the light blue is on-street bike network, and the dark blue is the off-street bike network. And it shows that little jog with Avenida and Cenas. The point being that I think we've got the counts are really covered along Carlsbad Boulevard. But if you look at the map and if you go to the next slide, this is the proposed count locations, and I've added some red dots. These aren't, final locations that I would suggest, but if you look, El Camino Real and Palomar Airport Road have very few, or it's very sparse relative to the length and the level of traffic there. So I was just suggesting adding 2 or 3, or maybe 1 at the intersection of Palomar Airport Road and El Camino Real, and 2 each in other areas. Some of those red dots are next to developments that are claiming that they're going to have a bunch of people walking and biking instead of taking cars. So it'd be useful to know. I also put a red dot on Avenida and Cenas, but maybe the location with the at 21, if there's an intersection version there, which I didn't know from the staff report. showing people going onto Avenue and Encinas, that would be unnecessary. Anyway, bottom line is my suggestion would be to do more along those regional bike network corridors where we really want to look. Okay, and then the last slide at the end is just a couple more. Maybe this is a question too. I know we have video cameras at most of our traffic signals in most of our intersections. And it's my understanding that they can do counting. It might be crude. Is it possible to save money or increase the number of counts we can do by using software-based detection of at those video cameras, maybe at the same time we're doing it in the other locations? Another question is, should we be counting bikes at bike racks to see if they're being used? And finally, I don't know if there are any active rideshare programs right now in Carlsbad, but if and when, it'd be a question, are there any public rideshare programs going on right now? And if not, if they become available, then I would suggest that we should be collecting data from those as well as transit.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, those are all good questions. First, on the intersection video capture, yeah, it's just not there yet in terms of technology. You know, this is something that traffic engineering has been pushing for a while. And there's just too many variables, like, you know, the angle of the sun, and, you know, just the unpredictable nature of bicyclists and pedestrian that, you know, I think it'll be there someday, but at this point, it's just not reliable enough to use automated counting methods for the video capture. Right now, it's still, you know, the manual part is still done, you know, with the technician looking at the video and reviewing it that way. So it is still all done by a human. But I know that's something that I think will develop, but it's just not there yet. In terms of bike rack usage, I think that's a great suggestion. And you know, I was actually speaking about some other accounts with Commissioner Pensieres, and he suggested that, you know, maybe we should look at conducting bike rack counts at some of the school sites. And I think that's a good suggestion. And we could maybe even look at, you know, changing out some of the locations we do have near school sites with bike rack counts, because that's, you know, an excellent determining factor on how many kids are biking to school, because a lot of them do have consolidated bike racks, which make it easy to count them that way. So I think let's throw that as an additional count tool that we have. Rideshare data, yeah, again, I'm aware of any, you know, with the onset of COVID, a lot of the rideshare really, you know, took a temporary pause, and I don't think there are any currently active rideshare programs at this time. So that's something we can look to count in the future, though.
And how about more the additional coverage of El Camino Real and Palomar Airport Road?
Yeah, and again, another good suggestion. I think we will look at taking some of these school location counts out and supplementing those with the bike rack count and doing some more counts on PAR. I like the idea of looking at Palomar Airport Road and El Camino Real, that intersection. I think that's kind of a good converging point to get some counts at. But yeah, we definitely need to look at some of these regional routes because of the impacts there. So good suggestions. I think we will consider these.
All right, appreciate the presentation.
Okay, who else had questions? Commissioner Pensier?
I only want to ask for one, so I don't have a map.
Okay.
But I'd like to see the intersection of Carlsbad Boulevard and State Street, where a roundabout is, covered in all directions. And part of the reason for that is because although Oceanside put in some in pavement bike counters, they're on the bike lane northbound. And so the way they've tried to use that is to take the people that run over that and double it for the people that are going south. But since there's a class 1 bike trail on the west side, and they don't have any counters there. That's, you know, they get very, very low numbers compared to what's actually going on there. So the problem is that, and the other thing that happens is people that are turning left on Eaton Street start moving over before they even get to the counter. And other people even move from the northbound lane. There's a gap at the bridge and they move into the bike lane there. So basically the Oceanside data isn't very useful. And I was asked by Mayor Hall when I was in to see him about continuing on the commission. He asked me how many cyclists use, you know, go through Carlsbad into Oceanside. And I thought I could get back to him when I got the counts from Oceanside. And then I found out that during the COVID thing, it didn't function. So there's a lot of reasons for the request to put it there. Some of the things I've noticed is that since the lockdown, there's many, many more people that are using that thoroughfare to get between the two cities. And they don't use it the way people used to use it, in that a lot of them are brand new and they're on e-bikes, and they ride the wrong way on sidewalks. They ride the wrong way even between the two places. We see southbound people coming into the city on the in the northbound bike lane or northbound sidewalk, so that they can get up to State Street without having to go through the roundabout. There's just all kinds of things going on out there. Lots of pedestrians that we could count there as well. It would also give us a good count on traffic and the delays in that roundabout. It's working a lot better than it was originally. Most people have finally figured out how to use it. And so I think it would be very helpful to have that on video at that point. So that's my one ask. I know it's a big one, but and I would be willing to give up lots of other spaces just to have that one. So then we would have both ends of the city where most of the cycling takes place now. And then any changes that we make, we'll be able to see what the effect of those changes are through that area. Yeah, to follow up on the bike counts at the schools, we did that. We made some changes in Oceanside. We did a lot of rodeos, and then we go back afterwards and see what happened, and it was pretty underwhelming. So we spent a lot of time doing these things with the city, with the schools, and it didn't change anything. So by doing counts at the bike racks before and after you do something, then you can really tell whether it had any impact or not. And to try and put a counter at a particular location leading to a school, you're probably going to miss most of the bikes anyway, because they will find ways to get to school off-road, and you'll just miss them all unless you go there and actually count how many bikes are at the school. Mm-hmm. So that was the reason I made that suggestion when we chatted the other day. Another question I have is, I know we can't use the cameras in the traffic control center, but the police have license plate readers, and I'm pretty sure they have license plate readers at the roundabout. And I know that there's issues with who can see that and what it's used for and so on. But with very watchful care, perhaps we could use those. Is that something we can look into, whether that's a possibility?
I don't think we have LPRs at the roundabout. Most of the cameras are on street lights, overheads, pointing down at intersections. So there's nothing there. So I don't think there's LPRs at the.
There are cameras up there. I've seen them.
Okay.
I don't know if they're the license plate reader cameras, but they are there at
Yeah.
all three of the light posts, including the one that somebody knocked down a couple of years ago. They had to replace it, and then they put another camera up there. Looks like a camera.
Oh, it could be.
If those are cameras, could they be used? Do you know? Anybody know?
Well, LPR is in a system. Anyway, go ahead, Tom. You could.
Oh, I was just going to say, I don't think it would be a significant cost differential because most of the cost is involved in labor. And
Yeah.
it would just be, it's, we have consultants that do this and they have their process they use. And I really don't think it would be that big of a cost savings. So unless if, like Nathan said, once the technology evolves and we can get a system in-house, then that would be a big cost influence. But until then, I don't think it's worth even. I mean, we'll definitely touch base with PD, with our police department to see if it is an option, but I don't think it likely is.
Yep. Yeah, the camera cost is very, very minimal. Just in terms of setting it up, it's really the data extraction cost, the technician reviewing the video. That's the majority of the cost for these. So we would need to do that either way.
Okay, the last thing question I have is that, we're going from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. and that's a good 12-hour time period. I mean, if you look at the automated data that we've collected in Oceanside, that pretty well covers most people. However, if you're looking for commuters, I know I commuted for 25 years back and forth, and you would have missed me in the morning every day, no matter where you set these things up. So I don't know I think for the places where you expect to see commuters, maybe that we could change the timing to make sure we catch the ones in the morning. And maybe that's Palomar Airport Road. I don't know. If it is Palomar Airport Road, it might also include Camino Vita Robles, because cyclists that are going up the hill there when they're going eastbound will usually get off Palomar Airport Road and take a much quieter street if they can.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good suggestion. We can even looking at maybe extending it out another hour or two. I don't think the cost would be that significant. So if we went from say 6 to 7, I think that would give us a little more coverage of that more early morning commute.
And Nathan, are the loops going? Are we getting counts from the loops in the bike lanes? I believe there are some capabilities of picking up bike traffic with loops, but I'm not sure if is that within our scope or is that?
No, we haven't looked at that.
Okay, it's all video count. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I see Vice Chair Perez. He had the question too.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to mention in regards to understanding how many students are going in and out of the school with bikes. Do we have crossing guards? Do we have contracts with them? And also, can we use, if they do any data collection or any observations, can we use that area as a way to do a kind of a rough cut count? I mean, they're in the areas of the bike routes to school, and you can see them coming in and coming out. So I don't know if we can use that as in our arsenals of tools to, particularly arsenals of tools.
Yeah, we can, Commissioner Perez, we can explore that. We are reaching out to the schools, separately as part of our Safe Routes to School program. So I think that's a good suggestion to see if we can, maybe for the month of September, we ask them to collect. We can explore that.
Well, my daughter's starting to learn statistics, so I can just put her out there on them.
There you go.
Yeah, and just count and keep some average. Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments on this item, Commissioner Linke?
I was also curious, I've heard that there's several city-owned bicycle racks in the village area. Would that be another place to do bike rack counts? I know I got myself in a little hot water maybe a few years ago, which I tend to do when we were talking about bicycle usage and I went to the city's Faraday Center over a few days and took some pictures of the bike rack there and demonstrated that there were only 1 or 2 bicyclists apparently riding to the Faraday Center and a sea of cars. So I don't know about public facilities too, like city-owned bike racks in the village area and at city facilities.
I think that was before the e-bikes. Now we should see a lot more bikes.
We should, but
you can go back and take some photos now.
We should. But yeah, I mean, the bike rack counts, those are easy to do. I mean, we could do those internally. You know, basically you're just counting it a few times throughout the day, taking a quick picture. So we could, I think that's a good suggestion. We'll look at in the village and at publicly owned facilities.
Okay, perfect. I think we received the presentation and provided plenty of input.